Hello Internet, my name is Olivier. I'm a mural artist based in London, England, and I use different techniques and types of paints and stuff and equipment to paint my murals. I like to do mixed media because it allows me to work quickly, and also I really enjoy the different looks that each technique gives me. And I thought I'd do this video to kind of give you an idea on what to expect if you don't know anything about using spray cans, brushes, airbrushes, rollers, all that stuff. I thought I'd give you a bit of an insight on the pros and cons on using each of them and what to look out for. So in this video, I'm not going to talk about paint sprayers, spray guns. I've got another video about this. I'm not going to talk about spatulas, all that kind of stuff. I'm only going to stick to spray cans, brushes and airbrushes. And I've got a little pad with some stuff. Sometimes people give me a bit of stick for having a pad, but I can't remember everything and then the video goes on for too long. So let's go straight to it. So the pros, we're going to start with the cans. The pros of using a can. So it's quick. You've got all this possibility in your hand and it's just ready to go, you know. You can put a different nozzle, different cap on it to give you a different effect. But if you watch some of my videos, you'll see that with the same cap, you can pretty much do the same, all sorts of different effects. So if you want, go and watch that. So you basically can work quickly. You get access to a lot of paints. You get access to all sorts of different paints anyway, but it's more about the vibrance of the colors. The colors in spray cans are normally more opaque and more vibrant than you would on other paints. Unless you go for something like this, where it's going to be, it's going to have a really good vibrance. But then again, I guess the opacity is not as good as a spray can. And I'm not talking about primer cans that you can get in car shops. Those don't really cover well because they shouldn't. You know, when you use a primer, it should be light. But this is for artwork, so they're like 3 times thicker, basically more opaque. Another thing that's cool as well, in most cases, you don't need a primer when you're using a can. You can just go with it straight away. And also because you're not touching the surface, not like with a brush, sometimes you can paint on something a bit delicate or a bit, like a rusty surface or whatever, and then do an artwork on this. Nothing's going to blend, nothing's going to come off, and you're not touching the surface. I've actually painted on snow before, which is impossible with these, but with a can, you can paint on snow, it doesn't matter. Also on dusty environment, it's no problem. One thing as well, when I say it's quick, when you're using cans to do a mural, say you're blending tones on a portrait, you don't have to wait. You work wet and then it dries really quickly, but you paint over, you're working dry basically. The paint is, you're applying it like it was a powder basically. As opposed to these, you have to let it dry. So you put in one color, then you have to let it dry before you put the next color, otherwise they'll blend together. If you're using oil-based paint, that's what you want, but if you're using acrylic, you either have to work quickly, so it's still a bit wet, or you have to wait, depending on what you want to do. So the speed definitely goes for the cans. Also, you can cover large areas with a spray can. I normally use a roller for as much as possible and then use the cans. And you can go down to about A1 as far as the detail size. And that's pretty much as far as it'll go. That's using a thinner cap and also using a stencil cap. If you go any smaller than that, you'll struggle and the detail just won't look that amazing. So that's for the pros. For the cons, obviously the big one is the fumes, but you've got two components of making something unhealthy. You've got the fumes and also you've got the particles. When you're painting, you've got this mist of paint that's hovering and you don't want to breathe that in, and also the fumes, really, that's like the main thing that hits you because it smells so strong. So those two things make it a bit difficult to work in shows and venues, that kind of stuff. Also, it's a bit difficult to get in certain countries, and shipping is super expensive depending on where you go. I've done some work in There was one I did in Egypt, but they were going to charge me, the paint that I needed was about £700, and I think the quote was £700 as well for shipping. Because it's explosive, obviously. It has to be shipped specially, so the paint shop sends it to, I think, UPS or whatever, and then UPS has to repackage it and then send it. So it's quite difficult to ship. So you can't really get it anywhere. In certain countries, it's just not going to happen. And also you need a can per color. As opposed to using primary colors, you can make a red, make a green. I've got a video about that if you're interested. 3 videos actually about that. So you only need a few, limited amount of colors. That's what I use when I'm using brushes and airbrushes. Maybe I'll get a red and a brown for speed, but don't really have to. With those, I've got the cupboard full of colors, so it takes up a lot of space. You have to buy a lot of different colors, and also you have to carry a lot of colors, when you're going to a job. So that's one of the cons for the can. Okay, moving on to the brushes. I'm going to talk about brushes and rollers as well. The great thing about brushes is they're available pretty much anywhere. The prices vary from super cheap to super not cheap. You can get like a pack of, I think I got about 20 brushes of these orange ones, and I think it was about £20. You can get some, this is my brand new brush, pinstripe brush. You can get all sorts of different brushes depending on what you use. I like those for when I'm doing the veins of my walls, also those ones. I like those for blending and for brush strokes, for effects, for character. This is for like smaller blends. You get all sorts of brushes, and normally they're not that expensive. This is about £20, and all the others are probably about maybe £5 each. So it's fairly affordable. Also, no fumes and no paint dust compared to those ones. So when you're working on a client and maybe you're working in a place that's a bit difficult with how clean it has to be, maybe you're working in a museum or something, I don't know, this would be the one, because it's going to be, you put your dust sheet and it's going to be no mess, a few paint splatter that's going to go onto the dust sheet, and that's about it. And if somebody maybe is asthmatic or something, that's going to be fine. These, not at all. You can't work with, also marine life. If you're working, if you're painting a fish shop or something, you can't use these because it's harmful for the fish. So you'd have to use brushes. So these are versatile, more affordable, more accessible. They're just easier. The colors, again, all I need are my primary colors and the red and the brown. Why I use the red, I talked about this in other videos, even though I can make red with these, it's never a vibrant red. And brown saves me having to mix all the time, because I use a lot of brown and beige in my portraits, in my animal paintings, all that kind of stuff. So yeah. And you can cover big areas. So these will be the pros for the brushes and the rollers. As far as the cons, it's slower. It's far slower than using spray cans. If I can do the same mural using spray cans, and it's going to take me maybe a day. The same mural is going to take me about 3 days with acrylics. Granted, let's say 2 days. 3 days with brushes, I can do some really good detail. With really good detail, I'll need probably about 2 days with the cans. And if I can use all my stuff, then obviously, about 2 days, I'll get the best speed and the best detail. So that's why I like to mix different techniques. But just by themselves, they're far slower. Another one as well is blending. If you're blending with this, or especially with an airbrush, blending with an airbrush is just far superior to anything. Second best would be spray cans, and then you've got brushes. You can do it, of course, if you know what you're doing, but it's far harder. Even somebody that knows how to blend properly and does, say we're talking murals, they're gonna have to work for it. As opposed to those, you just done, blend. So this requires a bit more technique. So it's kind of like, when people think about decorators, it's just painting a room white or whatever. there's a skill to it. You know, everybody can do it badly, but not everybody can do it well. So I guess it's the same with this. And another thing as well, in most cases you need multiple coats. Cool thing about cans is it's a one coat wonder. You do one line and it's as opaque as it'll ever be. With brushes, in most cases you'll have to put 2, maybe 3 coats. Similar with the airbrush as well, that'll require about 2 coats. But that's about it for the downside. It's pretty much all groovy with brushes. Okay, and last but not least, we're going to talk about airbrushes. So, by the way, now that I got a place to film, I've got videos coming about all of this. Not so much cans, because I've done a ton of videos about how to use a spray can, and now I'm pretty much repeating myself. But there's going to be stuff about how to do a stencil and all that kind of stuff. But there's the next video about brushes is how to blend colors using brushes. And there's going to be a 3-part series on how to use an airbrush if you've never used one, all the way to using it like a pro, I guess. So we're going to start with the pros of an airbrush. So an airbrush will give you great detail, better than anything else. If somebody uses oil paints or acrylics and they're really good at it, that's cool. But if they can also use an airbrush, if they're being honest, they'll say that this will give you better results, better detail, because it's just better. It's just, if you know how to use it, you can get, it's like cans, you can get really thin and, you know, medium amount of blends and stuff with this. It's very, very cool. The problem with with airbrush paintings, is a lot of people paint like they're stuck in the 80s. And I know some people are going to hate me for this and whatever, but a lot of the time when I see airbrush paintings, it looks, the edges are too faded. They're not sharp enough. You don't want to go super sharp because it looks like you use too much masking tape, but you don't want to be like, it's not a cloud, you know. I mean, I've seen some cars from some dudes in Mexico. I mean, this is like, wow. Like that kind of stuff this is when somebody uses an airbrush like to the best possible, to their best ability, I guess. Some of those cars are just crazy. Like this is the best, you know, it's not, the edges are not super sharp, but they're not super faded either. So when it's used right, this is amazing. But the problem is most of what you would have seen as far as airbrush paintings are not amazing, including my own paintings in the past, but that's about to change. So the result you get with an airbrush is probably the best, in my opinion. Also, all you need are the primary colors, just like brushes, and you're good to go. I really like this paint. This is One for All from Molotow. It's okay. It's a good paint. However, when I did this, it was dry, and then I had another color on top of it, and I started blending, and then the gray sort of came off a bit. So this is not the best. So it's a good paint for using on canvases, on murals. That's going to be perfect as long as you don't wash the wall. But you can't use this on cars, basically. A paint that, it's a good paint, don't get me wrong, but a better paint would be Golden High Flow. Golden High Flow is expensive, especially the magenta, series 7. Those would be series 1. I think that's series 2 and that's series 7. Series 7 is like 20 something pound, the small bottle, same amount, but the quality of the paint is there. It's just really, really good. Also, Fluid is a good one they have. If you're painting cars, I would recommend 2. I would recommend House of Color if you want to go oil-based, or Auto Air Colors if you want to go water-based. If you're using Auto Air Colors, I've used it on my previous car and on other people's cars. It's a great paint, but it will drive you insane if you don't keep your airbrush clean. Because it's got more PVA glue in it, I believe. It'll stiffen up, it'll get stuck, it'll get gooey, and once it's stuck in there, you're going to struggle to get it out, you know, and it's just like you try and clean it. So if you're using Auto Air Colors, use it for half an hour, maximum, then clean your airbrush. Half an hour, clean your airbrush. And also you have to thin it down a little bit. You can't just use it straight out of the bottle. They say you can, but I've tried and it's not true. So you got to thin it down minimum 10%. Otherwise, you're going to struggle. This paint, however, and also golden high flow, you can use them straight out of the bottle, no problem. So yeah, it all depends what you're painting. If you're doing canvases and murals, I would recommend golden and one for all. Okay, and also I'm going to do a pro and a con at the same time. It's a limited amount of particles in the air when you're spraying, like the spray cans. It'll have particles, but not as much. Like I said, it won't have fumes because this is, if you're using this, the fumes aren't really toxic, but it's the particle. And the particles of paint from an airbrush are far thinner than from a spray can. Spray cans are like, you can literally see them. They're like, you know, it's bigger. But this is very, very small. So it's easier to get into your lungs. Also, this is water-based. We are water-based. It'll dilute into our system easier than oil-based paint will. So even though, like when we breathe this stuff in, it's not good, but our system will flush it out. This, it gets in, right in. So there's a big debate between water-based and oil-based paints. So, you know, and I'm not talking about the debate from the governments because they don't know anything. And they're saying they're banning all the oil-based paint because it's toxic or whatever. Water-based paint are equally bad depending on how you use them. So if you're using an airbrush, don't think it's harmless. Wear a mask and at the minimum, wear MDF mask. I used my typical, it's on other videos, my typical 3M disposable, the blue masks. I like those, they're cool. At the very least, wear like a paper dust mask. It's not enough, but you know, you gotta wear something. So that's the pro and the con. You know, not too many paint particles, but they are paint particles. So you gotta be careful. It's not like this where it's fine. Also, you need a compressor for it. So this is a battery-powered compressor because I love my gadgets. And if I'm doing a show, this is great. Or even if I'm painting somewhere else. It uses power, if you are the power or whatever. But the good thing about this is it allows you to carry it and go pretty much anywhere. It's easy. Compared to a traditional airbrush compressor needs to be plugged in, there's no battery. So when you have to show or something, they have to supply you with power, and sometimes it's a bit of a problem. However, those other compressors, they go to about 40 to 50 psi, which is 40 psi is ideal when you're airbrushing. This only goes to about 20, 25 psi, which is fine if you know how to airbrush, but it'll give you a much thicker paint spray than a compressor with 40 psi will, or 50 psi, because there's more delivery of air, and then you know the paint gets thinner and it's lovely. Like the detail you get with a normal compressor, it's much better than this. But I got this because it's portable, it's easy, and most of the time I will use a roller, then a can, then a brush, then an airbrush at the end, and then go back with a bit of brushes. So I just use it for like, you know, a bit of blends and stuff, which is what I think it's great for. Great for freestyle and covering, great for versatility and detail, and great for blends. That's mainly what I use them for. And the other one that's the big one with airbrushing, apart from having to clean it every 2 minutes, is the learning curve. This is a far longer learning curve than using cans or using brushes. If somebody hires me to teach them how to use one technique or another, they can book me for 1 hour or 2 hours, and I'll show them what I know about how to use a can. I'll give them all the theory, and then all they have to do is just practice and it's done. Same with brushes. An airbrush, I need a week minimum, because there's certain things you have to do, like your position, how you press, how you keep your finger on the trigger, don't lift it. It's a bit harder. I don't know if I mentioned, I'm going to do a 3-part video on airbrushing. So I'll explain all of this in there, but it's a longer learning curve. But if you know how to use it, then obviously that's cool. So these are the pros and cons of why I use all of these techniques. To sum up, it's quicker. Using mixed media, it just makes me work quicker. It's also more fun, and it allows me to use the best of each technique, and then whenever I reach the limits of that technique, just use the other one that picks up the slack. And that's how I work. But if you work differently, please put it in the comments and tell me, maybe you have a different paint that's better, or different brushes or equipment. Put it in the comments. I always read and try to reply as much as possible. If you like this video, put a like, it helps the channel, and also subscribe if you want. And I will see you guys and girls next Wednesday, 1 p.m. UK time. Bye.